A little bit higher. Okay. Josh is adjusting our levels back there, so we'll see if that works. I could just keep talking till you can hear me okay. Let's see. I don't know. So far, a little bit louder, warmer, colder. Marco, Polo. Okay, that's what we got. Okay, that's what we got. I can try moving the mic up a little bit more too. Okay, so we'll go with that. All right, well, welcome. We are continuing our walk through Genesis here. Sometimes it is a jog, sometimes it is a very leisurely stroll, but that's good, right? So we're trying to make sure we get into all this good stuff that's happening here in Genesis. So we're picking up with chapter 22 this week. So some stuff which probably is a little bit more familiar. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we do, though, let's open with prayer. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks that you have given your Son Jesus to be the one who is sacrificed for us in our place. We pray that you would bless our conversations today as we see how your scriptures point us ahead through your people of old to that hope that we have in Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. Okay, so where we left off, right, Abraham is living in Beersheba, this place where there is this well that Abraham has set an agreement with Abimelech, the prince of the area. There's a good relationship between them. Abraham is well respected. All these things are happening here. And significantly, what has happened in Abraham's life? What big change has happened? He has a son through Sarah, right? So that he was a father before through Hagar. We have Ishmael, and Ishmael and Hagar got sent off. So they're outside of the family now, but Abraham has his son Isaac, which means he laughs, right? Isaac, he laughs because Abraham in his old age, Sarah in her old age, and on top of that, not just old age, but one who had been barren has had a child. So we now have Abraham, this child of promise has been given, this son from himself through his wife, that God has said that through him I will bless many. So we're going to have some of those connections from the past looking ahead to the future here. All right, so chapter 22. After these things, so those things we just talked about, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here am I. Now, before we go farther, right, this word that God uses, that is used here in Genesis for testing, right, it's a specific word. It's not the word that we use for tempting, which is trying to lead people away from God, try to lead people in a direction other than God would have them go. Testing here is kind of used in the sense of like a refining or a purifying, so that there is going to be like a pass-fail kind of thing, but it's not that God is doing this to try to get somebody to fail. Does that make sense? So it's, what's that? Well, the testing is the good English translation. I can pull up the Hebrew here, but it's testing in the sense of like a refining. So it's somebody is being tested with the desire that it's coming out in the positive outcome. So let's see. Yeah, so similar kind of thing with Job, and that's actually the Lifelight study is going to be starting a Job study. But with Job, God allows the devil, the accuser, Hasatanos, to test Job, to put Job through trials. So kind of a similar kind of thing there too. Not so much with Abraham to have him undergo suffering, but that it is a thing which, looking ahead, is a vindication, if that makes sense. So let's see as we go through this. Let's see, the testing in Genesis 22 is what is that? The Shah? Yeah. Yeah, so like a trying, or approving. Approving is another way we could translate that. Okay. So God tests Abraham, said to him, Abraham. And he said, here am I. God says, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. All right, so what's God telling Abraham? What's he say? So yes, you're going to go and you're going to kill your son. Now, just a couple things. There are some things here I don't want us to miss, right? So verse 2, what does God specifically say to Abraham? Take your what? Take your only son. Is Isaac Abraham's only son? No. Ishmael. But Ishmael is now out of the household. So he's no longer the son. So here, Isaac is Abraham's effectively now only son. And his beloved son, right, so that of his wife, Sarah, this beloved son, the son that he had longed for, this miraculous son who was born to a father who was way too old and a mother not only way old but had been barren. So this son, whom you love, God recognizes this. And go to this land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Now, I suppose we can get into this now, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later. This mountain in the land of Moriah, it doesn't specifically make this connection here, but there are some other things later that this mount in the land of Moriah could be Mount Zion, where Jerusalem would be. So think about that as we're going through the rest of this here. So he's going to offer him up as this burnt offering. Now, yeah, Jan. Yes. So this is something that would be practiced in the pagan cultures occasionally, this child sacrifice. So for God to be telling Abraham to do this, it seems crazy. Like God's not like those other gods. But there's that does go on, that evil. And the burnt offering is something to be offered up, like entirely consumed by the flames, offered up in its entirety, right? So there's not going to be anything left. So what does Abraham do? He gets ready and goes. So God has given him this instruction. So Abraham gets up early in the morning. He gets his donkey ready. He takes 2 of his young men, so the servants, and his son Isaac. He cuts the wood for the burnt offering. He arose, and he goes to the place of which God had told him. Now, geographically, so Beersheba, where Abraham is staying and living, it's about a 2 days journey to where Jerusalem would be. So it's about this 2-day journey, and then on the 3rd day, which, hey, 3rd day, that sounds like a connection with something else. We'll talk about that in a minute. So then on that 3rd day, Abraham says, there's the place where we're supposed to go, way over there. So Abraham says to his young men, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. Why does Abraham say that? Is he just making up a story to these servants? We're going to go over there and we'll come back later. Because what's Abraham know he needs to do? He's going to sacrifice his son, right? How's his son going to come back with him? Well, here's the thing. In Hebrews, if you want to go way forward, looking back, it's saying about Abraham that he trusted that God could even resurrect his son. So that even Abraham could go and offer him up as this burnt offering. But Abraham trusted that even then, God could restore him. So that's, because these points of connection are all throughout the scriptures. But okay, so Abraham he goes with Isaac. He takes the wood for the burnt offering. He puts it on Isaac, so Isaac carries it. And at this point, Isaac is probably about 12 years old, 12, 13 years old or so. And they go up onto up to the mountain, to the place that God had showed him. Abraham takes in his hand the fire for the burnt offering and the knife. So they both go together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, "My father." And Abraham said, "Here am I, my son." He said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for a burnt offering?" So Isaac's not ignorant. He knows that if you're going to have this burnt offering, right, you need to have a lamb. You need to have something there for the offering. So Abraham says, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they both went together. How is what Abraham says, knowing what Abraham knows, a bittersweet statement? What has God done? No, God provided Isaac. God provided the son. And so when Abraham says God will provide for himself the offering, Abraham knows what he's saying. God has provided the offering. Not from Abraham's perspective, it is. From Abraham's perspective, he knows he's talking to the offering. This is hard stuff. That Abraham is doing this. Well, yeah, certainly, yeah, because he's not like, not yet. So with that, so they're going up. Isaac's like, well, where's the lamb? Abraham says God is going to provide. Because Abraham knows God has provided his son. He's going to go to offer his son up as an offering. So both of them went together. So when they come to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And at that point, so this is one of the things, it doesn't say here if Isaac, is just trusting his father as his father ties his hands and says, "Here, just lay up here," or if maybe, I suppose it's possible that maybe he gave Isaac something to make him sleep and then tied him up and put him on the altar. I don't know. It doesn't say. These are possible things. But so he has taken his son and put him up on this altar. And he's going to slaughter him and then light him on fire, right, as the burnt offering. That's what you would do with the animals, right? So he's made the preparations. He's put the offering on the altar. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here am I." How did Abraham start this when God spoke to Abraham? "Here am I." So there's the book ending here. So there's this connection. And then the angel, so the voice of God speaks, saying, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." So God speaks. Did God know beforehand? Well, God's omniscient, right? But here it's proven. So the testing has happened. And the testing has come out. Abraham, think about what's Abraham's relationship with God like after this? Because that's the point of the testing, is a strengthening, the proving. And now, so let's keep going, right? So Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." So Abraham was unintentionally prophetic in his words. So God did provide the lamb for the offering, the ram, right? So God provides the offering. And so the offering is lifted up. Do you guys see any connections for something being sacrificed in place of something or someone else? What do we got? Say it loud, right? Jesus. So God provides the substitute. So as Christians, reading Scripture in Christian lens, right? God has provided the substitute, the sacrifice, because something needed to be offered up as the sacrifice. But instead of it being Isaac, instead of it being the beloved son, here it's offered up the ram. But as we read this in our Christian lenses, looking ahead, right, the ram, instead of the ram being offered up, it's going to be the beloved son. And if this is happening on Mount Zion, where the temple is going to be built, that would be the place where the people would be offering up their sacrifices to God. And nearby this, after the temple, when we get, however many 2,000 years later or so, after that point, Jesus is going to be offered up as a sacrifice, as a substitute in place of us. Now, that all sounds cool, but see what happens next. So after let's go back. Okay. So the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord. Because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." So we hear God repeating the promise, the covenant that he has made to Abraham. And who is the guarantor, I guess, right, of the promise in what we just heard? God. He's promising by himself, like on himself. There's no higher authority that he will fulfill this promise. What are the aspects of the promise? What's the first aspect? What's the first part of the promise? I'm going to bless you with descendants. A nation. There's going to be so many of them. So many descendants. And then after the descendants, what's the second part? The second aspect of this blessing, this covenant. That's the third part. Jumping ahead. There's a second part. So your people are going to have a land, and not just any land, but the enemies. So they're going to take over the land of your enemies. And thirdly, all nations are going to be blessed through you, through your descendants, through this Isaac, and through his children. Because remember this, what is Genesis about? As we've been talking about this, what is Genesis about in general, as we're reading through it? What's that? Not just creation, that's how it starts, but this whole book of Genesis. What's that? So we're seeing a genealogy, right? We're seeing a history. We're seeing a family history. Whose family history? Yours. Your family history. And it's been going from Adam and Eve through their children. We've seen there's been other people, right? We've heard about other people, but it's kept focus. It's kept tracking down a particular family line. And now we're at Abraham. And it's going to go to Isaac, and it's going to keep going. And it's going to keep going, looking ahead to the one who would be the fulfillment of this promise, that all nations would be blessed through this seed, this descendant of Abraham, of Isaac, and this family line. So we're keeping track on this particular family line because this is going to be the fulfillment of God's promise. And it goes out from here to us today. You guys tracking with that? This is key stuff. I want to make sure if there are things you're taking away from our time in Genesis, take that away. This is your history. This is your story. Okay? All right, should we keep going? Okay. So this has happened. They're up on the mountain, Mountain Moriah. So this has happened. Verse 19. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived at Beersheba. So Abraham, the word that he spoke to his servants was true. He and his son went, they worshiped, and they came back. Then they've gone back home to Beersheba. Now after all this, so now we have a little bit of an interlude. And whenever we get to these genealogies, there's going to be some reason for it. After these things, it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel father of Aram, Hesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jolpa, and Bethuel. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. Oh, Rebekah, I think I've heard that name someplace. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Ramah, bore Teba, Gama, Tahash, and Maacah. That's chapter 22. Chapter 23. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, I am a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I might bury my dead out of my sight. Okay, so Sarah, Abraham's wife, his companion through all these journeys, mother of his son of the promise, Isaac, dies. They die in that land of Canaan. So Abraham goes to the Hittites, and Hittites could refer to a number of different people groups, but basically he's going to the leaders of the people, or the elders, so kind of those who would sit in the town gate. And the town gate is where you'd kind of conduct official business, official transactions, things like that. There's the multiple witnesses. But he goes, rather than necessarily asking for somebody specifically, I'm going to ask for permission because I'm a sojourner in your land. Now, how long roughly has Abraham been in Canaan, if you were to guess? Any guesses? Let's throw something out there. What's that? 50 years? Okay. Any other guesses? 40, 47, 20. Okay. 67 years. Ballpark. 67 years. He's a sojourner in the land. So he hasn't set down roots. But if you lived in Belvedere for 67 years, or even lived in northern Illinois, because we're talking about a region, right? For 67 years, I'm just a sojourner. But that's the thing. So he's not a native. He's looking now. He's coming to them and saying, I want a place to buy that will be mine, or will be my family's, right? So there'll be a permanent connection to the land. So he comes with this request to bury Sarah, and then others, right? So others who would die from his household. And the Hittites, verse 5, answered Abraham, "Hear us, my lord, you are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead." So how do the people of the land regard Abraham? With respect, with honor, with great honor. So they know who Abraham is. They look upon him with honor. This is a great thing. And not just, oh, well, certainly we'll do this, but no, you can take the best. None of us are going to say no. We hold you, Abraham, in such honor, and this whole thing, Prince of God, that they recognize Abraham as a prophet, as someone who has a special relationship with the divine. So they do this, they extend that to Abraham. Verse 7, Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land. And he said to them, "If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place." So Abraham has heard their offer, just that they'll extend this to him, and he says, "Well, I want to pay for it at full price." Because why is it important if he does pay for it at full price? It's his, right? It's officially his, and there's absolutely no question about it. Now, Ephron was sitting among the Hittites. So Ephron's there, this guy so Abraham is asking for permission from the whole, so it's not just talking to somebody specifically, but first getting the blessing of the community. And he says, well, if it's possible, so let me ask Ephron that he might give me the cave there. So Ephron's there. Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, of all who went at the gate of his city, "No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead." So here he's saying, no, I give it to you. You can have this cave. You can have the field in it as well. So then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land. He said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, "But if you will hear me, I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there." So again, Abraham insisting there. Now this is fun. Ephron answered Abraham, "My lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Bury your dead." So Ephron, this is kind of sly here, right? He's like, "Oh, this land, it's between us here. Have the land." But what does he do as he is saying that? He's naming the price, right? It's like, "Oh, this land, which is worth 400 shekels. Have it." So he names the price there. So, all right, Abraham listened to Ephron. Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that had been named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. Now, we don't know how much that would be worth, but it's not a small thing. But so he makes this official transaction. So the field of Ephron and Machpelah, which was the east of Mamre, which is the oaks of Mamre, we heard about those. The field with the cave that was in it and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the fields of Machpelah east of Mamre, that is, Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as a property for a burying place by the Hittites. So Abraham now, at long last, has land that is his family's, officially in the land of Canaan. And Sarah is buried there. According to tradition, there is Sarah's grave underneath the mosque of Abraham, I think, in Hebron. According to tradition, is that location. But so the promise is being fulfilled, right? There's land connected with Abraham And now Sarah laid to rest there. Any questions on what we've got? Yeah, Jan.
So are you saying when Ephraim offered to give this land that he expected to bargain? Was that a thing?
Let's just say his offer might not have been,
Sincere?
well, entirely sincere. He was open to the possibility of selling it for money. But so the social dynamic, right, is he's in the court, the gates of the city with the city elders that are there, and they have said, oh, nobody's going to withhold from you having this land. So can he very well make Abraham pay for it? No, because the rest of the people have said, no, we're going to anybody is going to give you land. So he does kind of work it in there. It's entirely possible he is being sincere and he's just mentioning that, but for it to be on his mind is probably indicative of the fact that he knows its worth and would like to get something for it. But still, the best construction is that he offers it, and he does offer it. And Abraham does, from his part, willingly pay for it. Okay. What's that? Oh, that he was trying to work the deal. I don't know. But these are real people, right? So that's I think one of the things that helps to connect in this. This isn't a fairy tale. It's real people, real concerns, and maybe some desire for restitution, that kind of thing. But we don't need to make too much of it. But it's the main thing though is as a result of it, there is an official transaction, and Abraham has that property. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
400 shekels were about 10 pounds.
For the weight, yeah, and this is back at that point in time. Like we know more recently the shekel weight, but yeah, it could be, but it's not insignificant. Is the main thing to take away. Okay. All right. Yeah.
You bought that land and take them security.
It is. I mean, it's a place not just to bury Sarah, right, but any others. A place where he can. Because it's not like he's moving to that land, but there is a connection, a tie to it. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I don't know actually. So when we get later on, because he is returned and Jacob as well, brought back to be buried in Canaan. I don't know if it's the exact same spot. Okay.
Pastor,
Yeah.
shekel, according to shekel, was 31 cents in the United States dollar.
Oh, really? Okay.
Trivia.
Yeah. I have not heard that one before, but okay. So that's not a ton of money.
31 cents.
That seems a small amount, but okay. All right. So verse 24, or chapter 24. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven, the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred, and take a wife for my son Isaac. The servant said to him, perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? Abraham said to him, see to it that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. Okay, so Abraham at this point is so old he's not able to kind of be up and about. He's certainly not able to travel back to the land that he came from to try to find a son for his wife for his son. But he knows. So Isaac is getting older here, marrying age. This is something that is pressing on Abraham because it would be his as the father, as the patriarch, responsible for finding a wife for his son, especially if they're in this land here. But he's not able to do it. So he gives it over to his most trusted servant, the one who's basically his right-hand man, running the household and kind of overseeing the everything else, and entrusts him with this responsibility. And, yeah. Yes, I will talk about that momentarily. It's a good question because it's this weird thing from our perspective. So he entrusts this to him and says, okay, I'm giving you this responsibility because we've heard back from earlier on when it refers to the Canaanites, generally speaking, they're regarded as kind of wicked, or there's this connection, so that you can't find a wife for my son here because if you do, right, she's probably going to be leading him away from worshiping Yahweh. So you need to find some connection that's going to reinforce and not take away. So that's part of why Abraham is entrusting his servant to this. Now, the whole thing about the hand under the thigh. So is it culturally significant? There's a couple different things. One, so if you can imagine, so you put your hand under my thigh. So it's kind of a sign of submission to a higher authority. So he's kind of like he's sitting on his hand, right? So that sign of submission to the higher authority. There's also connection because the thigh muscles and the groin would be the main like power. If you think the strength of a man image we see, his submission to that authority, and also the trust with the groin, the trust in the promise of the Messiah that's coming through the line. So kind of those different things coming together there. That's with the sign of the hand under the thigh, that he's going to make this oath to follow his master's instruction. Does that help? Okay.
May I read my footnote?
Sure, yeah.
It says, in Abraham's culture, hand under the thigh was how an agreement was sealed or a covenant ratified. To accomplish the same purpose, we shake hands, swear oaths, or sign documents in the presence of a
Notary public. Sort of, kind of, sort of. So, but it's that pledge. Okay. So he says, you're going to go back to the land that I came from. You're going to find a wife, and if she doesn't want to come back with you to Canaan here, then I free you from the oath. Just don't have Isaac leave this land because God has promised it to me and my household, to my descendants. All right, so the servant puts his hand over the thigh of Abraham, his master, swore to him concerning this matter. Verse 10. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. So why the 10 camels? Well, so he's bringing the camels. Maybe the camels are going to be in part a gift. They're carrying goods, right, as this kind of bride price. But also, if she's coming back, and maybe some of her household coming back with her, they have something to ride on, right? So they're making preparations, thinking, all right, they're all going to be coming back, or some coming back here. So this caravan goes out, and they go back to the land where Abraham is from, and the servant makes the camels kneel down outside the city, the well of water, at the time of evening, the time when women go out to draw water, because they're not going out in the heat of the day to go to the well, right? So they're going to come out, they're going to stock up, take them back to their homes. So the servant says, O Lord, O Yahweh, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. So the servant makes this prayer and entrusts this to God's care. Because if he asks somebody for water, of course she's going to say, well, sure, have some water that I've drawn. But it's unlikely that she's going to say, well, let me get water for your camels too. So he asked God to give him this sign. And before he had finished speaking, it's a cool connection. Before he had even finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother. So there's the familial connection here. So, all right. So Abraham's has like grandniece or something like that, right? Because it's Abraham's brother's granddaughter. So, whatever that I'm really bad with those extended familial labels. Anyway, so Rebekah, she comes out with her water jar on her shoulder, coming out to the well. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. What do you think about that? What had he just finished doing? So asking God to give him this sign that, hey, if she gives me some water and then waters my camels as well, then okay, she'll be the sign. Did God tell him to do that? No, he's the one who comes up with this idea, right? If you have your steadfast love, your hesed for your servant Abraham, no sooner is he spoken than Rebekah's coming out, and he looks at her, and what's the first thing that he notices? She's beautiful. And she comes, she does this, she gives him water, she says, hey, well, while you drink, I'll get water for your camels too. And he's like, I wonder if she's the one. Duh. Right? I mean, God in his grace, the guy shows up in town, the first person that he's meeting pretty much is the woman that he's got set for Isaac. Because as we're going through Genesis, we keep seeing God's hesed, his steadfast love, his faithfulness at work. So, okay. So he's watching to see if she's the one. Verse 22. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half shekel, and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels, and said, please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder and room to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord and said, blessed be the Lord, God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman. Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. So Abraham's servant realizes, yes, God has kept his promise. This is a great thing. Not only has he led me to this woman, she is related. She's a kinsman of my master. And so this is all coming up roses, right? So Rebekah goes, tells her mother's household about this. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms and heard the word, so the servant gave these great gifts of wealth to Rebekah to go and send this good message to the household. And he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister. Thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels of the spring. He said, Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels. And there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. So the servant wasn't coming alone, right? It wasn't him and 10 camels. So there's a whole party that's come out to on this mission. Okay, where were we? Okay, verse 33. The food was set before him to eat. But he said, I will not eat until I have said what I have to say. He said, Speak on. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old. To him he has given all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell. But you should go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, Perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said, The Lord, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you have come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out draw water, to whom I will say, Please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, Drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and went down to the spring and drew water. I said to her, Please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, Whose daughter are you? She said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets in her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you're going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I might turn to the right hand or to the left. So the servant has this retelling of everything that has happened. Here's the deal. Here's why I'm here. Here's what happened when I got to your town. Here's what happened with Rebekah when she came out to the well after I had this prayer to God. She did this, and so, bam, she's the one. Tell me whether or not you're going to let her go. Well, it could be a different kind of nose ring than maybe we had there too, but that's just the ornamental jewelry, ears or nose or things like that, is a sign, a visible sign of being adorned with wealth, right? Is the riches. It's not like a nose stud necessarily or something like that, which you could do, I guess, but in different cultures, there's different kinds of the ornamentation. But she's coming back to the house, like visibly, like you got some bling on now, right? She got the gold ring on her nose. She's got these fancy golden bracelets. It's like you don't go out to the well and just come back looking like that. Something's going on, and it's not insignificant too. So he is bearing signs of the wealth of Abraham. And so giving proof for what he said here about how God has blessed Abraham. Okay, so then Laban, so the brother, and Bethuel, the father, answered and said, The thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. So, they're saying, you can't say no, because this seems like a thing that's come from God, so have Rebekah go back with you. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they rose in the morning, he said, Send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, "Let the young woman remain with us for a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go." But he said to them, "Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away, that I may go to my master." They said, "Let us call the young woman and ask her." And they called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "I will go." So they sent away Rebekah, her sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gates of those who hate him." Then Rebekah and her young woman arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went on his way. So they say, "All right, well, don't go just yet. Stay with us for like 10 days, because this is all rather abrupt. We'd like to maybe be able to have some time to say goodbye." So okay, that's not crazy for them to say that. But the servant's like, "Well, no, God's got me on a mission here. He's blessed that he's prospered this way. Let me go back to my master and bring her back and complete my mission." So they say, "Okay, well, let's at least ask Rebekah what she wants to do," which is a little bit surprising that they would do that, but they do. And she says, "Yes, no, I'll go." So she's willing to go back to this land that she's never been, to marry a guy that she's never met before. So there's some trust and maybe divine trust in this too. So they go back. So Rebekah, her nurse, the young women, they all head back on the camels with the servant and his men. Now, Isaac had returned from Bir Lahai Roi and was dwelling in the Negev. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes. And when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." She took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So we now have this connection. This God has provided a wife for Isaac from Abraham's family, so not from the people of the Canaanites. And it's kind of, as far as we see, it's this love connection kind of thing. Whether it's the love at first sight, I don't know, but it certainly seems like it goes happily for this kind of arranged marriage, if you will, and God provides. So questions? Yeah.
What's the significance of her covering herself?
So it's a sign of modesty and respect, especially in the ancient world, that she's going to meet this guy for the first time. Anything else? And it's not necessarily like it was like a mask kind of thing, but like probably like a silk or like a translucent or something, kind of thing like that.
In my other Bible, it says she covered her face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you can imagine, and if you've seen like in movies and things like that too, it's like if somebody's got some sort of like a silk covering or something on their head as she's traveling through the desert, they just kind of take it.
Going back to Adam and Eve.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, but it's still a modesty kind of thing. She's not going in with like a low cut dress or something, like trying to tempt him or something. Yeah. There you go. So, yeah, so there's connections with that too. So that there's the veil for the bride coming into oftentimes coming into the wedding. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? All right. We'll pick up next week as we'll keep going with chapter 26 and see what God does. God does next. Oh, we skip? Oh, I skipped over. Never mind. We'll do 25. We'll do 25. I was looking too far ahead. There's some important stuff that happens in 25.